Dubai is an emerging market. It's a competitive market. And so the narrative of the hustle culture can easily take over, where every single day we're running, we're just doing, and we're unconscious about how we do.
Welcome to Step 2025, Day 2. This is Portstar Pop-Up Studio. And joining us today as the fifth guest in our cozy open-air studio is Nancy, who is bringing a very interesting topic of emotional intelligence. Nancy, welcome to our studio.
Thank you so much, Lara. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself, what you're doing, and why emotional intelligence at the first place.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so my name is Nancy. I am the founder of Inlight Consulting. And Inlight Consulting, what we do is we infuse emotional intelligence into brand strategies, and we also nurture it into the leaders and the founders of those brand strategies.
And is this an organic process, or is this something that comes as an artificial process in the region? How do you see this?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say that the reason why I ended up in this space was because I started to see this interesting discrepancy between people who were successful. And I was starting to notice that there were individuals who seemed that no matter how much knowledge they had, no matter how high their IQ was, they still seemed to struggle in business. And upon doing more research and observing, it was really the people with higher EQ, emotional intelligence, that seemed to have the best success, even if they didn't have all the knowledge that they needed for the businesses they were running.
So what are the elements of emotional intelligence we're talking about, and how are they integrated in the brand strategy businesses?
So emotional intelligence is basically broken up into four. First, it's about self-awareness, which then leads to behavior management. And then there's social awareness, so understanding the other, the person around you in your environment, and how that can impact your relationships. And so when it comes to business, it's really not about just business. It becomes about you as an individual and as a leader, and how you are imparting your self-awareness and bringing that into how you deal with other people and how you react to the stimulus that surrounds you every single day.
So I think first of all, it's a very, very relevant topic for Dubai, considering the speed, considering the pressure, considering the amount of stress.
Yeah.
Either you're an executive in a big corporation, or you're a startup founder or a startup employee, for example.
Yes.
You need to be in a certain level of self-awareness, probably, and understanding what's happening with you to be able to properly handle it.
Yes.
So how do you suggest to manage that? So, I mean, how do you, let's say, see this emotional intelligence integrating into this whole Dubai environment and the speed and the stress?
Yeah, so Dubai is an emerging market. It's a competitive market. And so people are definitely hustling. And the narrative of the hustle culture can easily take over, where every single day we're running, we're just doing, and we're unconscious about how we do. There's nothing wrong with competition and with achievement and success. I think where there's a difference between the emotionally intelligent, successful individual and the one that isn't, is the space that they create between what it is they're trying to achieve and how they respond to it. Because we're reacting, we're not responding.
Absolutely, yes.
And there's a big difference between reaction and response. Reaction is unconscious and it lacks emotional intelligence, whereas response is mindful and thought out and deliberate. And so it's okay to do and to achieve and to desire more in your life, but what's inside of you and what is driving all of that? So that self-awareness comes in where you're saying, okay, I want to go for that next leap. I want to go for that next goal, but I'm doing it for very specific reasons that are aligned and connected to me as an individual, in my character, and as a person. So what are those values? I don't think we talk about values enough.
Yeah, we don't. We definitely don't. But I think don't you feel that Dubai requires, or has traditionally been requiring you to conform to a certain let's say speed of response?
Yes.
Like, you don't really have a lot of time to analyze what's your goal. You're grasping the opportunity that comes here, and then you take time to probably live your life whenever what's left after you've been stressed, after you've been able to handle something really quickly, after you've been able to stay here at the first place, right? And then after you grasp that, you take your chance probably to have a nice holiday, going somewhere. I mean, and that's how we live in Dubai. I mean, if you remove like all the big picture, but I'm trying to bring you in. How do we integrate, the right response? How do we integrate the intelligence and the values into what's happening in the UAE and what it requires us to be?
Yeah, I think that collectively we will grow when each one of us is accountable for the way we behave in the world. It's easy to say Dubai is like this,
True.
But at the end of the
True.
day, we are each, and that's what self-awareness is the accountability to be able to say, how do I want to show up in the world and contribute in a meaningful way? And do I want to live my life where I'm waiting for the vacation or I'm waiting for the weekend?
Yeah.
Or am I able to take every single day and infuse within it the things that I value most, so that when I'm working, there is a sense of flow and there's a sense of centeredness, so that I'm not stressed out or tired or impacted by the environment of competition. It becomes natural and collaborative. It becomes something that happens without the kind of draining impact that often the hustle culture can bring to people and leaders and employees.
So this is how you infuse the message of being emotionally intelligent. When it comes to business, how do you bridge these two worlds? The emotional intelligence, the value world, and the business world, right?
So it's about organizational culture.
Yeah.
It's also about branding. So there's something that I say often when I'm working with businesses or even with personal brands around their brand. And I say, when we sit down and we talk about your vision, your mission, your values, I'm not giving you these impactful and powerful words so that you paste them up on your wall and walk away. Because that is equivalent to putting lipstick on a pig. So if internally you are not embodying these values, living by them, and by that in a business it means you're hiring for them, you are you're evaluating your employees based on them. You are putting in policies that incentivize them. Then it's just words on a piece of paper or painted on a wall. But it needs to be led by example. It needs to be embedded within an organizational culture where there is permission. Because we're all talking about innovation. Innovation is not about strategy alone. Innovation is about creating the permission to be vulnerable. Because where do great ideas come from? They're born from a deep, vulnerable place in a creator's mind. And so in order to be able to create, we need to be able to be vulnerable. But in order to be able to be vulnerable, we need the psychological safety and the permission to do that.
How do you see it on the practical and execution level? How do you see this being implemented in the company as a startup culture, considering again the demanding startup environment and the requirement to be fast, to respond to the change, to also think about the products, to think about the revenues, the sales, etc. How do you see implementing that culture as a natural organic exercise for our region?
I think that I there's a misconception that we're going to be able to get there faster if we're all just hustling and going crazy. But the truth is that if you have a team that is fundamentally less stressed, more aligned, more centered, and focused, but laser focused on a vision that they truly and deeply believe in, you inevitably will be more productive. You will inevitably have less turnover, and that cost that you waste when you have to hire again and start over again, it's hard to see it, but that's where you actually gain more ROI and more speed to market. It's not by sheer speed. It's by avoiding the cost of losing employees or stressed employees or all of that. So, and you bring that into your culture by, again, literally embedding day-to-day practices of emotional intelligence. And you don't have to call them that, but it's, again, about allowing people at a table to each have their opinion, to be whole humans. You know, when I'm hiring somebody who happens to be, let's say, have other interests or maybe be a parent, am I thinking of that individual as a holistic being whose life experiences and interests are rich and adding value to the conversation? Or am I simply thinking of the list of tasks and the skills that I need them to come and complete? So we have to think of ourselves as human, really, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So I have recently had a conversation about, cultural, the company growth, and one of the points that I mentioned that whenever I hear growth, I think about sales. I can't help. I think about sales.
Yes.
But what we ended up talking about is exactly what you've just mentioned. We spoke about the way we approach the structures and the way we approach the functions.
Yep.
Meaning that we used to look at the organizations and structures in terms of, okay, this is the function I need to fill in. I need to find a person who fits in with exactly this, ticking the box. And that is a very painful topic for, Dubai and the hiring process. I know we're oversaturated, but anyway, ticking the box is usually very, very difficult, right? Or it is simple and it's fitting, but then whether you're getting the right talent or not, that's another question.
Yeah.
So, but the culture, what you are suggesting is when you look at a person as a holistic and you rather look at his capabilities and how he can enrich this role versus what you need to be filled in. So how it puts a lot of pressure, on hiring teams, it puts a lot of pressure on a leader.
It does.
So, which brings me to the question again of emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So what do we need to do to implement here in the region to be able to help leaders to embrace that culture more and more?
Fundamentally, you need to understand what emotional intelligence is. And again, I always go back to this, but you need to first become emotionally intelligent for yourself as a leader. You need to embody and you need to lead by it. But again, I don't want an employee who ticks all the marks if he's not adaptable, if he's not able to change and be flexible when I need to pivot. That's the speed. It's his emotional intelligence, his ability to handle change and stress in a way that if we need to do something different right now, that he's going to be able to turn around and see that vision with me. And so as leaders, it's not so much about pressure. I almost want to completely reframe the thought and actually say to you, take away what you think you know about hiring and about business and come back to fundamentally what you know about humans and our needs and our ability to connect in relationships. We all fundamentally have that inside of us. It's actually the noise that has removed our intuition to be able to sense that an individual will be the right fit. So when you learn to be able to listen to that inner intuition and voice, hiring is not as complex as you think it is. And there's actually tools that allow you to identify whether an individual is emotionally intelligent. In fact, even not just at the business level, at the school level.
Really?
Yes. Today, if I want to get into a certain Dubai school, they will do a character skills assessment on my son in order to be able to identify whether he's resilient, whether he's emotionally intelligent, whether he's adaptable, because these are the skills for tomorrow. It's not something you can just get a certificate, tick a box, and this individual will do the job. It goes back to what I said earlier about me looking at people who were successful. They ticked the knowledge boxes. They may have had the knowledge, but if they didn't have the emotional intelligence, it was not sustainable for them. They eventually hit a wall.
Interesting that you mentioned that. So I wanted to dip a little bit into the technology that you just mentioned. So as we are in a tech space and STEP this year is pretty much tech focused, that's what we've noticed. Talking about the technology that allows us to define whether a person is emotionally intelligent, adaptable, nimble. So how credible are those tools nowadays? You as a person who is in that business, so how credible can we trust them? Do we need to apply different techniques to be able to see like a broader view?
Truthfully, I'm not the biggest fan of these kinds of things. So again, for me, as much as I embrace tech, I'm a big user of AI. I'm a marketer, by trade. I think that we will more and more desire the fundamental skills of our humanity, like emotional intelligence, as technology rises and as AI, takes up more space. And so I would say always trust your intuition before you trust any other tool that might be there to support. And I think that's been a huge part of the conversation as I myself have attended some of these talks is, yes, AI is here. Yes, AI will take bigger and bigger space in our world. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, there are human capabilities that are involved with intuition and ethics and critical thinking that the AI will never be able to learn at the way that we can bring as humans to the table. So
what is it to be adaptable? How do you define adaptability in terms of the skill, either in employees or in leaders? What is it to you to be adaptable?
So one of the main components of emotional intelligence is curiosity. And curiosity is fundamental to adaptability. So what is emotional intelligence essentially doing for you? It's allowing you, once again, to create space between stimulus and response. So rather than stimulus and reaction, it's stimulus and response. So that space is where your freedom and your power and your adaptability lies. That space is where you become curious. So somebody comes to you and says, your boss or your startup, the startup entrepreneur you're working for says, that's it, we're not doing that anymore. We're going from this direction to that direction. In that moment, you can react and get furious, or you can stop, pause, reflect, understand, create space, and then become curious and response. So get curious before you get furious is something that one of my mentors once taught me, and it stayed with me forever. So it's really just about thinking, okay, this may not be the way that I wanted it to be or how I thought it would be, but how can I still bring value to this change? How can I adapt and still make it exactly what that vision and outcome was, and have that North Star always in mind rather than the momentary pain I might be feeling from this change?
Or probably make another choice, which is also a scenario, isn't it?
Or absolutely, make another choice.
Create a space and get curious about whether this aligns with your purpose and the value. So what kind of pressure and what kind of sort of responsibility it actually brings to the executives in this case? Like, for example, if we want our, let's say, teams to be adaptable to our vision, to our products that are changing, to the way we're making money. As an executive, as a leader, as a founder, how am I going to be adaptable to it?
I mean, as a leader and a founder, actually, there's characteristics of leaders and founders, and they happen to be a little bit more naturally, I guess, adaptable. So lucky for them. But the people that they hire may not be so. So I think it's about communicating that change is inevitable, setting expectations about how we can react, future pacing. So what happens when something like this happens? How will you feel? How will you react to it? How can you make sure that if and when it happens, because it is inevitably going to change, something will change, how can we think about and visualize a reaction that will be more empowering rather than disempowering? So I know lots of people talk about visualization and manifestation, and it sounds woo-woo. But for those of us who've actually really used it and seen the truthfully magical power of it, you will know that it's the same if you try to impart that with whether it's your team or your children or the people around you. Emotional intelligence is not just about business. We are full and holistic humans that show up in work, and we're bringing all of that to the table. So make that part of everything you do and everything you say on a daily and regular basis, talking about change, talking about how we feel about those changes, and just normalizing it so that when it comes, you're like, I'm ready.
Yeah. So what motivated you to start the business around emotional intelligence and infusing it or integrating it into the brand and individuals and cultures?
Honestly, like any creation, it usually starts because there was a problem. And I think I probably started as not very emotionally intelligent individual myself. And I used to be quite sensitive to all the stimulus around me. And I became a mother.
Yeah.
And I saw that I had very different children who reacted to the world around them differently. One of them was quite empathetic and compassionate. The other one seemed completely oblivious to the world around him. And I got curious. And I wanted to learn more. And as I got older, and as you develop very deep and emotional relationships to you, you learn and discover more about yourself and how you show up in the world. And as I started working in my corporate environment, once again, I noticed the difference between the successful and the people who struggled. So it was truly from a place of curiosity and desire to help myself that I decided I wanted to tap into the world of emotional intelligence. I wanted to bring it into the brand strategies that I was working on. And I also, I wanted to teach it to everybody, because collectively, when we are all showing up accountable, then we are going to create permission and a space where people all feel like they can open up and say, okay, I made a mistake, or I'm not feeling I can do this, or I need your help, or I'm sorry, or I forgive you.
Yeah. That's an interesting niche to evolve, I think. So I wish you best of luck.
Thank you so much, Lara.
Great to see you at Step, and definitely emotional intelligence in business is one of the significant topics that needs to be implemented on a holistic level.
Yes.
Educated, promoted, and people need to learn how to use it and how to actually develop it in yourself.
100%. Thank you so much for bringing that conversation to your audience.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love anything that has got to do with the non-traditional business topics.
Amazing.
Like to bring in.
It is.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.